of at this age being able to have the energy and wellness to spend time not only with their grandkids but with their kids, to have the energy and good backs enough to take long trips and maybe start a new business and have our adventure. Instead, what I found is many, I'd say most, were instead contending with fatigue, with heart issues. It was becoming painful to walk, and it turns out that a lot of our dreams didn't come true because of this. This is not what we had hoped for our later years. And my mission has become to help people not go there. And turns out a lot of these problems are caused by little variations in our DNA that interfere with the healthy aging of our arteries, our brain, and a lot more. That we can detect these changes now and do something about it. To me, that is just an incredible jump in healthcare. So I want to explain how that works. And to do that, I want to remind people what DNA is. DNA includes your template, your basic plan for all of the proteins in your body. And it turns out, you can look at our DNA as a string of 3 billion letters in a precise order. And that's the code. That's what codes your proteins, which is what fuels your biochemistry. That's you. And so every now and then a letter isn't where it's supposed to be in this string of letters. Maybe a different letter is there, maybe it's missing, maybe a couple, all kinds of variations. And most of the time, those variations do not affect our health profoundly. But occasionally, when your DNA has the wrong letters there, and the code itself has an error in it, so to speak, it cannot code properly for a protein, which is critical to your health, especially as we age. A lot of the genes I'm going to talk about are the ones that come into fruition as we age. And what we're going to talk about is your genetics and healthy aging. So what I'm going to show you is what our DNA test looks like. So what I do is I just swab you, simple cheek swab, and you get back a report about the genes that profoundly affect your ability to age well. And as you'll see here, some of these are yellow, some are red and green. Red means I inherited a disadvantaged gene from both parents. Yellow means I inherited it from one parent, and a green means I'm okay, I'm good to go. And much to my surprise, on this first page, almost all my genes were disadvantaged. I had no idea, and I was not doing anything to overcome them. And that's what we're going to talk about. I don't know if many of you caught the cover of Time magazine several years ago. It said, why your DNA is not your destiny. And that's precisely what we're going to talk about, is changing your destiny, your health destiny, by understanding your DNA and doing something about it. So the ones we look at, the genes, the variations, not only profoundly affect your health, they're very common. All of us will have a lot of yellows and reds here that we have no idea and have no idea what to do about. And here's the most important part. They're actionable with nutrition. So we now have a marriage of genetics and nutrition so that your nutrition can be customized to your DNA and these genetic disadvantages offset. And your customized formula will be 1 out of 500,000. They literally make a batch of one for you. And your formula will help you compensate for these genetic disadvantages. So I want to share what some of those are very briefly. As you see, the first one I have is in red. I had no idea that I have a genetic disadvantage on using vitamin D. And in 1993, I found out I had very fragile bones. It used to freak me out. I used to hang on to the railings as I went downstairs because I knew at my age, if I fell and fractured my spine, kiss my quality of life goodbye, perhaps, maybe even my life. So, and I studied nutrition, I worked with a doctor, and we did everything, the minerals, the foot strikes, exercises. She even had me take a little extra vitamin D, about 1,000 milligrams. Well, for 17 years, I just could not make my bones healthy. And I started my nutrition that was customized to my DNA, detected that I had this problem, and in my formula compensated for it. I started my formula in April, 4.5 years ago. The following December, I did a bone density test, and for the first time in 17 years, my spine was healthy. My doctor was amazed, I was thrilled, and I had no idea that because of this genetic deficiency, I needed at least 4 times more vitamin D than my doctor had guessed at. Plus, I need cofactors like vitamin K, which helps keep your calcium in your bones. So this one gene alone probably, I can't say it extended my lifespan, but definitely the quality of my life. I no longer worry about hanging onto railings. And as you know, vitamin D, what this is saying is that my body could not bind with vitamin D. And it's when vitamin D binds with receptors that your body is able to use it. And my receptors were able to do that genetically. Vitamin D affects your cardiovascular, your inflammation, your sugar regulation, and of course your bone density, even your mood. So this was a critical problem to detect and do something about. The next ones I'm just going to go over real quickly. I'm going to explain this one because if you understand this, you're going to understand how this all works. I have a disadvantage in that my DNA has a problem and it cannot code properly for a protein, in this case an enzyme that protects me from toxins and pollutants. If you don't have a good detoxification system, you're looking at premature aging, you're looking at cardiovascular fatigue and poor immunity, none of which I wanted. I had no idea I had this. My only sign was I was really kind of sensitive to chemicals, but I didn't know that my body, despite my excellent nutrition, I mean, I'm a health nut, and I had studied nutrition. I was taking everything that you can take, especially for detoxification, but none of it made up for the fact that genetically I could not produce an enzyme that plays such a critical role. So what we do is we detect, in this case, that I could not make this protective enzyme against toxins and pollutants, and then they give me nutrients which enable my body to make that enzyme, that protective enzyme, despite my genetics. And that, to me, is the most amazing thing. That's the genius of how this all works. It detects that my body can't make something and gives me what I need to make it despite these problems in my DNA, none of which I was aware of. These two reds and yellows play a huge role. I am so disadvantaged in terms of premature aging, disease, and the first one, I think one of our speakers talked about macular degeneration. I cannot genetically produce the enzyme that protects me against the most damaging free radical we encounter. It's called a superoxide free radical. That damages your eye tissue. It can damage your breast tissue, your prostate tissue. I don't have to tell you what health issues can arise from that. So, but again, they detect I can't make this protective enzyme, and they give me the nutrients which enable my body to amplify that enzyme in my body. I mean, to me, this is one of the coolest things you can think about. The next one's similar. I can't produce an enzyme that protects me against very damaging free radical. I don't have to tell you, free radicals are, the consensus in science is they are the major cause of aging, especially premature aging and health issues. So now I take my formula, they compensate for these, and I feel protected. And I'm going to tell you about the bottom one because I think anyone who's interested in skin would want to know about this. I call this my fun gene. This one means that my DNA has a coding error. It cannot code properly for an enzyme that has to do with collagen. And in this case, this enzyme tears my collagen down, and that's not a good thing. Collagen kind of holds us together. It's the main protein in connective tissue. It gives the structural integrity to blood vessels. It concentrates, it's the biggest protein in your bone. It concentrates in your joints and your tendons and in your skin. And the reason I call this my fun gene, like I said, I started taking this formula which detects that I overproduce this enzyme and compensates for it. I started taking it in April, 4.5 years ago, and I went to my sister's 80th birthday in July, and I'm sitting on her couch, and do you remember how as young girls we sat with our legs tucked under us? I'm sitting on her couch, and I haven't sat that way probably literally in 65 years, and I'm sitting that way, and I call it my fun gene because I felt so liberated. And when I hit my early 70s, I could not do a deep knee bend. I can now do my deep knee bend. I'll spare you showing you that. But I just feel so liberated. But actually, this is a very, very serious gene that can cause a lot of grief in people. One of the remember the bobsled team from Jamaica in the Olympics, the Winter Olympics? From Jamaica, this hot country with no snow. They actually won, and the leader of that, Greg Harrell, was a retired football player. He could run on the beach on a Monday, and he could not run till Thursday. And he felt he really needed to run every day for his health as an aging athlete. And he has this gene too. And he reports that not long after beginning his DNA customized formula, he was running every day. So there are a lot of NFL players taking this because they have the top most nutrition, the top coaches for nutrition, and this just adds a whole new dimension to that. This takes us into the new era. Eventually, all of our nutrition will be customized to our DNA, and our kids and their kids will wonder, oh my gosh, they took supplements without matching it to their DNA. They'll probably think that was very crude and primitive. So, the next page are my heart genes. And this first page was all a surprise to me. I had no idea I had these errors in my DNA and how profoundly they would affect my ability to age well. The second page are all my heart genes. And as you can see, 4 out of my 6 are disadvantaged. And this did not surprise me. I knew we had heart disease in our family. And I'm only going to talk about one of them, because then I want to talk about the heart a little. This yellow here means my DNA has the wrong letter in the wrong place, can't code properly for a protein. In this case, it's a protein which regulates the ability of my arteries to flexibly constrict and deliver blood to my heart muscle instantly when it needs it. And you can what this gene, this yellow means is that I will be prone to artery stiffness. And as you can imagine, if your artery is inflexible and can't immediately constrict, it's kind of stiffened, it may not be able to deliver blood when you need it. And in fact, when you can't deliver blood to your heart when you need it, you're at risk of stroke. Well, I saw I had this gene, and I knew my genetic formula detected it and was helping compensate for it. But I thought what I would do is check the stiffness of my artery to see if this had really caused an issue. So I had worked at Stanford Medical. I worked briefly in the cardiac cath lab, did not want to have an invasive catheter put in my heart to find out what my arterial stiffness was. There's a specific measure for that. Instead, I found a doctor in Palo Alto who can measure artery stiffness with a non-invasive device you put on your wrist for 2 minutes, and right there get an instant readout of how your arteries, how aged they are. So now remember, knew I had heart disease in my family. I spent 3 decades practicing heart prevention. Everything, the omegas, the meditation, the blueberries, whatever came up for heart prevention, I did. So when I went in there, I was absolutely shocked and really dismayed. When he checked my arteries, I had the arteries typical of a 90 to 100-year-old person.
Wow.
I was a stroke ready to happen, had no idea. I'd seen my doctor every year, had done the senior life screenings. They simply don't test for this. They might test for plaque and carotid and other things. And I didn't have any, but my arteries were stiff beyond belief. And here's the good news. A year and a half later, I tested as someone between 20 and 30 years old. So I call this the gene that saved my life, because if I hadn't detected it and done something about it, I might not be here talking. So I do want to talk a little about our hearts. As you can see, half the DNA they look at is DNA that strongly affects your heart's ability to age well. This red one, I'm sorry, I'm holding it upside down. This red one means that I can't produce a protein that protects my bad cholesterol from oxidizing. And everyone knows oxidized cholesterol can cause havoc in your arteries. That it starts with streaks in your arteries, and then with immune cells gloming on, and calcium gloms on, and soon you've got plaque in your arteries. It's a big issue. It takes a lot of lives in this country, that issue alone. So what they do is they fix that. They give me nutrients. I can't say fix it. They support my health. They give me nutrients which enable my body to protect my LDL despite my genetics. So these are very important heart genes. And the reason I'm here today is I think this is one of the best things I've ever done for myself in my life. The second reason is, I think you all know now, one of the biggest killers of women is heart now. Do you know that women now have more heart attacks than men? They are more fatal to women, and women are more scared of cancer, and yet cancer is a much smaller risk to women than heart disease. Women are especially afraid of breast cancer, and I've forgotten what it is. It's like 1/20th the risk, way down there. So, and women are not aware of this. And so I think we all know that diet and exercise plays a good role. Many of us know that women are taking a lot of calcium, and they're not balancing it with vitamin K, so their arteries will tend to get calcified. This is a huge heart risk among women now. And so what we have is a device which I told you about, that non-invasive device that we can put on your wrist, and we can look at what is the state of your arteries in terms of this stiffness that is such a risk for stroke and heart attack. And in a matter of 2 minutes, have you see where you fall on that scale. So we have this two-pronged approach for the largest killer of everyone in our country. One, looking at the genes and problems in our DNA and doing something about those, because all of these genes affect our heart, not only the 6 ones here, but all the ones on the front page. Every single one affects our heart health. So we do that, and then the second thing we do is we screen people, and if their arteries are older, if they're at risk because their arteries are stiff, we not only find that out, but we have a natural product. It's an amino acid formula, which many people have probably heard of. It's citrulline and arginine. It's been tested and validated many places. Cedar-Sinai uses the same formula, and it's Heart and Multiple Organ Transplant Unit, the High Desert Institute, and they had phenomenal results with this natural amino supplement, which supplements the genetic. I flew down to see the press conference when the interventional cardiologist who ran this organ transplant facility spoke. And he had he had 33 patients. They were all eligible for heart transplants. They were all at the point he had nothing more he could do. And he had lost quite a few already to coma. And so he felt that was such a tragedy while they were waiting for transplants. And he put them on this simple formula developed by this doctor in Palo Alto, originally developed at Stanford. And 6 months later, no one was eligible for a heart transplant anymore. Everything from renal function to pulmonary hypertension to all their heart functions had improved so much that they were no longer eligible. And that's what we can provide for you here. So we would love it if you want to take a look at your DNA. And let me tell you, it is so fascinating. And we can do it. This test, same test, was the Pig Out of the Human Genome Project, developed and overseen by a world-renowned microbiologist who's a full professor at the University of Pennsylvania. And I'm sorry, I lost my thought here.
Human genome.
Pardon? He was in the Genome Project, and I'm trying to remember why I brought that up. I'm sorry, having a little thing. But I was talking about the proarginine, and I drifted back into genetics. So anyway, the genetic part is one hand of it, and the other hand of it is this natural product, which has been tested and used at Stanford and at Cedars-Sinai. So, I remember where I was going. I was going to recommend that you take a DNA test. I can swab you in a few minutes. That same test, doctors were charging $800 to $1,200 for. We take that same test and charge $99 for. And you can see your DNA, and if then you do need some support, you can decide to do it. But first you can look at your DNA and see what it says. And then the other thing, we have a heart screening. This, all I can say is it saved my life. I was absolutely, like you said, shocked and dismayed when I found out I was such a stroke risk. So that device is here, and Heidi is the person who does the screening, and it's well worth it. It's so important to see where you stand in terms of your arteries and heart disease. So that's it in a nutshell.